A couple weeks ago, I booked a study room, and while I was lingering on the library's website, I bumped into a fascinating statistic. LMU has one of the largest publicly accessible postcard collections in the United States. How did we get it?
The story began with Werner von Botenstern. He was a world traveler, a freelance photographer, and as a collector, he amassed an enormous personal collection of 1 million postcards. Werner von Botenstern connected with LMU in the 1960s and 1970s when he held the annual event for Southern California Postcards Club, and also later a series of international postcard exhibits on campus. So at some point, the library director at the time, Father Theodore Marshall, entered a conversation with von Botenstern about postcard donation. So in 1968, von Botenstern donated his personal postcard collection to LMU. And since then, people continue to donate their postcards to this ever-growing collection.
People kind of consider the collection to be really random, but it is a really interesting thing to think about, especially before the internet, how postcards were a really important aspect of just communicating with people.
Postcards are essentially little palm-sized windows looking into different places and times. They also reflect the material culture and social environment in which they were created. And here we have, starting with earliest postcard in the collection. This is actually reminded us how postcards started as quick ways of sending messages to communicate information between two parties. For example, we have a wanted postcard for a murderer with a $200 reward, and this postcard was sent in 1880 from Los Angeles County to the Chief of Police. So the postcard collection is organized into two main categories: view cards of different geographic locations and thematic cards of various different topics. So to navigate a collection, we use two pretty extensive inventories that list the different places and various different topics of postcards that have been sorted.
We are taking the time to organize them by location, down to the nichest, most random locations in the United States.
It also reminds us of the business and buildings that no longer exist. For example, Los Angeles used to have an alligator farm that was a tourist attraction. Some international postcards also show images of people. So this is kind of more of a genre of ethnographic postcards, documenting and kind of showing visual representation of people from different places.
Like going through kind of these older relics, these older forms of communication is important for us to understand like the history of like how we connect as humans.
This 1909 New Year card has a surprising message in the back, basically saying, the clock on this card means it's time for you to see a doctor with love.
We have always, throughout history, had different ways of expressing ourselves, writing each other, documenting things, and getting to physically touch them and look at them kind of shows that we're not too separated from that past now.
History is in constant dialogue with our present. This postcard collection is just one of the many ways in which a student can physically interact with the past. Behind every great collection, there's always great people, and their passion for artifacts like postcards is what keeps history alive.